Dancing into our studio and into our hearts, we are proud to welcome Raja Feather Kelly.
Woo! Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Raja, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having
Thank you so
me.
much for coming.
So good to have you.
I feel honored.
So you have been blowing up this past year. You've been working on The Death of the Last Black Man in the Whole Entire World, Fairview, and my personal favorite, A Strange Loop. So in February next year, you're going to be directing Young Jean Lee's We're Gonna Die at Second Stage. So how do you have this amount of bangers in such a short amount of time?
I don't know. I'm not the one who gets to decide that they're bangers. So I just take on the projects with the people who I think are fun to take on projects with, and you get to decide what's a banger.
You got that juju. You got that juju.
I've got that juju?
Yeah, you got that juju.
You do. That juju that you do. Putting that out there.
But
You choose to sign on, so you're also able to see, what you can accomplish.
Yeah, what when you see something like that, what gives you the okay?
I guess it's a little bit of impulse. I mean, I don't think that I'm thinking, is this going to be a hit or is this going to be awesome? I think I'm wondering if it's going to be an interesting project to work on. I'm wondering who are my collaborators are going to be, what their interest is. Do I really have something to offer the project? Is that somehow answering questions that I have or want to ask myself? I think those are the things that I think about when I'm engaging with a project.
So speaking of collaborators, so you're doing a project with Young Jean Lee. Is this someone that you've worked with before?
I've never worked with Young Jean before.
Really?
I've never worked with Young Jean before, yeah.
I think when I was researching some of the work, I came across an article where she helped you with a grant proposal or something like that.
Yeah.
So I assumed that there was a relationship before.
No, we've never collaborated in any sense. I knew that she had applied to a grant that I was applying to before, and she had actually reached out to me to ask me some questions that she was working on a play and asked me to just talk through some ideas with her over the phone, and I had done that for her. So I felt comfortable with asking her, hey, I also know that you applied for this grant before. What was that process like?
Right.
Could you give me any pointers? And if you read this article that I wrote, I was referring to how she told me to sort of use as many expletives as I could in order to get through the application. And so, when you talk about your own work and then you use expletives, it can be pretty fun to be like, hi, my name is Raja Feather fucking Kelly, and I'm making a fucking piece about some fucking really interesting shit in this fucking piece. And so once you then remove the expletives, sometimes it can be, you're like, oh, okay. When expletives help me to be more direct, and she had incited that idea in me.
That is I don't even know her personally, but that sounds like the most Young Jean Lee shit I've ever heard. You know what I mean? Because isn't her whole thing is do things that make me uncomfortable or something?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
her philosophy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I know We're Gonna Die is in February, but could you talk a little bit about that project?
Yeah, so Young Jean Lee has offered me this opportunity to reimagine this show, We're Gonna Die, which she had performed herself in 2011. Fact-checked that.
Okay.
And yeah, so she had an opportunity to present something at Second Stage and wanted to do this show. And as you've said, she wants to do things that make her uncomfortable. And so her idea was, what if I gave over this show to you to completely have your vision and for you to reimagine it in the way that you would, what would the show be? And that's what this project is.
Right, because she usually produces under her own theater company.
Yeah, yeah, and she, she's a wonderful director in her own right, so she could do it.
Right.
But even when the show was made, my understanding is that the premise was that these stories could be told by anyone. I think many people think that the stories are her stories and that when she performed it that they had all happened to her, but really, it's a collection of stories that she has accumulated over time from interviews and from people that she has worked with. And so in a way, it's like a play like any other play where the person who is directing and performing the play brings it to life, and that's what I'll do. I'm thinking. My thought is like, what if I had come across We're Gonna Die in like an old bookstore, and I was like, oh, this is the play that I'm interested in doing. I like thinking about death, and then I opened it and was like, I'm gonna put on this production. That's essentially how I'm thinking about it, and then I'm reimagining it under my own the things that I think about and the things that inspire me and what my aesthetic is and how I want to contribute to what art making is.
So did she reach out to you to direct for that?
She did, yeah.
Oh, like just sort of randomly, or was there some sort of like dialogue you had beforehand?
Well, in retrospect, I don't think it was random, but I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask. It seemed kind of random to me, but I think she had been thinking about it. Right. She had seen Fairview.
I was gonna say, well, like after like a lot of those bangers.
I think she found for her like all
over this.
Yeah. You'll have to get her and ask her, but I do. She's been seeing my work, and we have a similar background. Like we're both downtown experimentalists who are now working in a different sector, and so I think that maybe there was also perhaps an affinity for that experimental theater work that we both share and come from.
Yeah, because what a dream of a collaborator to be just, I've mounted this, but now I give it to you and I trust you. Like, that must feel so good.
I think it's a very noble thing to do, and I feel honored to and fucking scared to take on the charge. And I'm interested in the project. I think the text is really complicated and also very approachable and accessible. So to take a perspective on that's my perspective, and to theatricalize that with an amazing performer, Janelle McDermott, who I'm working with, I'm looking forward to it.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So are all of us.
Yes.
So speaking of downtown theater and et cetera, your work has been described by the media and other people in the industry, perhaps, as surrealist, evocative of pop and queer culture. And Liliana Blaine Cruz has called you the king of fucking shit up. How would you describe your own aesthetic? If you can top that.
I wonder if she's gonna have to deal with that, or if her and I together are gonna have to deal with that for the rest of our lives. Now that she has said that, and it's like quoted in a newspaper somewhere.
It's such a good quote.
Yeah.
Well, Raja means king.
Oh,
that's what Raja.
Right,
that's what the name means. So maybe she was just tapping into like.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So the question is, how would I describe my own work?
Yeah.
I would say that I believe that the words I use often are I celebrate and interrogate popular culture. That is where the impulse of what I make and what I see and what I'm interested in. That's where it lies.
Is there anything specific right now that you're pulling from?
How do you mean?
Well, maybe for this upcoming production, We're Gonna Die, or just, I don't know, generally, if something right now that you feel like, I think this would be good for whatever future projects or whatever.
Well, I do. There is a question that so I have my own dance and theater company. We're working on a show that will premiere at the end of 2020. So I'm working on this show, We're Gonna Die, in the beginning of 2020, and then at the end I have my own company's work. And a question that I'm asking myself right now is who gets to tell whose story? Because there is a lot of ownership, there is a lot of identity, identity politics. There's a lot of stories that need to be told, a lot of stories that need to be unearthed. But who gets to do that, and who gets permission to do that? And I'm very curious about that. Even with and I say that because I think that exists a lot also in We're Gonna Die, right? Like this, Janelle has to take on telling this story that in performance needs to become her story, but what isn't her story, right? So in theater, we're like, these aren't our stories, and we have to tell them, we have to identify with them, we have to make them our stories. And in the downtown experimental world, their identity right now seems to be the foundation of storytelling, and it feels almost like if you are the person who has this lived experience, then you are the person who needs and should be telling that story. And I'm curious about what is fluid about that, or what is not fluid about that. And again, who gets to tell whose story.
Right, the limits of those.
Right. My company is working on a show called Wednesday, and that is a retelling of the movie Dog Day Afternoon, which stars Al Pacino, who robs a bank. And he robs a bank to get his boyfriend at the time, or girlfriend,
It was
again, I mean, yes, well, it's definitely his wife. So like, this starts to get into the details of like, how do you retell this story? Like, like the language of the film would say that it's Al Pacino's boyfriend who goes through a sex change. Today, it might be it's more appropriate to say his girlfriend or his wife who wants to undergo sex reassignment surgery. So it's already there that it's important to start to take note of what media has done to tell stories, and how that represents or misrepresents a certain culture, person, and or time or identity. And so by taking on this story of retelling that story, but from the perspective of Leon, who was the motivator for the entire bank robbery to get a reassignment surgery, we want to take that on. And not because we feel like it's our job to retell the story of this trans person, but it's important to us to think about how we uncover untold stories in popular culture, which is something that we've always done in our works. We're like, what are the stories that are untold? What are the stories that we're not paying attention to? And I certainly feel like as a queer person of color that I'm like, where's my story? Where are my stories? I have like, I don't see them. And as much as there is more, I think you mentioned this earlier in our conversations, more inclusion, I'm also like, where's my story?
Yes.
So, and who's gonna tell? And do I feel like I want to be the one to tell my story? Maybe I want someone else to tell it. But like, if I emailed you and I was like, can you tell my story, Ray? Or like, can you tell my story? Would you feel feel at this time right now that would be okay or not okay? Like, it would be challenging. Who gets to tell the story?
That is a challenge. It would be like, I could maybe help direct.
Yeah, you're like, maybe about somebody I can,
sounding board.
Yeah. But,
voices is so important.
It is. It is. And I think it's important to continue to explore what art is and what art can do, and to learn, I think it's just important to learn. Our sort of motto in our company right now is, it's the scariest thing to do is have an idea. The scariest thing to do is to have an idea.
Say it again.
The scariest thing to do is have an idea.
Yes, for the people in the back.
Right? It's scary, but it's also important. So that's my idea.
Word. So because you've brought up your own dance company, could you
Dance
explain...
theater company.
Dance theater company.
Dance theater and media. Right. That's what the 3 is.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. Can you please explain what the Feather Theory is?
So the Feather Theory was actually this novel that I wrote. So my middle name is Feather. It's actually Feather, Raja Feather Kelly. And in November of 2008, when I was studying abroad in Australia, I had gotten food poisoning, and I needed to turn in a certain number of pages for my English major. I was an English major, and I competed in NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, which happens every November.
Oh.
And so I attempted to write this novel called The Feather Theory, which was my manifesto at the time.
Okay.
Look,
Just
like
It was college.
yeah.
it's like
That was
you
a
go
time.
to go to college. Like I am of an age where, you know, I didn't have a cell phone or a computer until I got to college. And so I think like maybe one of the first movies I saw in college was like Waking Life. Like I just got like really like philosophical very, and I was like, I gotta write a manifesto.
Right.
So
And I wrote The Feather Theory, which was this analogy to human life and human relationship to feathers. And so, this is so stupid, but also kind of meaningful to me and has become my life's work. But so feathers like come together and they separate. They come together and they separate. And I was like, that is what humans do. Like, how do we come together and why do we fall apart? Like that, like with that question alone, you could really have an endless experience in a creative process of understanding how do these two people come together, what makes them fall apart, how do these two people come together, what makes them fall apart, how these two people come together and they stay together, how do these two people like never meet, how do these people come together and separate and come together and separate and come together and separate like feathers. So I wrote that.
Oh, that's so compelling. I mean, that's a crux of so much drama.
Exactly. I mean, I am a child of melodrama, that's for sure. So that became something that I was really interested in, and then I've always been attracted to not just making dance movement, but theatricalizing the body and using multimedia always. And so that 3 was to kind of symbolize the pillars of what makes the devised work that I make, which is dance, theater, and media. So the Feather Theory, how people come together, why they fall apart.
Do you find that theater choreography and dance are very different mediums?
Not for me. I don't think about it differently. I think about it perhaps as volume, treble, and bass.
Oh, so that it's part of the same kind of symphony? Or?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So, you know,
Okay.
you're just sort of adjusting the knobs. You're like, okay, like, I'm gonna like here's behavior, right? In theater, I'm so invested and excited by just, you know, like if this was a scene, I'd be so excited about how people like shift or how people like do things like this, like, and that's choreography, right? But then, you know, at some level, it could become really phasic to where it's more like dance Frasian choreography.
Right,
we're like,
right.
oh, now we're sitting in these chairs and there's a whole like drama around what we're doing. Like then it would feel more phasic and more like dance choreography and not just like theater choreography. That's like, oh, let's, you know, what's the theatrical version of how we sit and talk to each other, and like, what does this mean?
Yes.
Right? Like versus what does this mean? Versus like, what does like this mean? You know, like it's a versus like if I'm talking to you, but like over here, like all of this means so much more.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And we don't always pay attention to those things, but we are totally affected by them. And I love being in a rehearsal room where I'm like, maybe just like, you know, why don't you just like put your hand like on that chair for this scene, you know, like, and like lean in a little bit. Like that's a whole, it'll just like change the whole experience for anyone.
Oh my God, it's like, yo, Raja, choreograph this interview.
This has been choreographed by Raja Feather Kelly. Stay tuned for more details.
Yeah, right?
How people come together.
Right.
And how they fall apart.
It's like cut and then like the whole setup is
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
I like enter.
I'm like, you're gonna enter, you're gonna sit down, you're gonna lean in.
Right.
And then I'm gonna push you back with just a look, and then we're both gonna look over, and you're gonna be like, y'all. And then we're all gonna like showgirls. That's the whole thing.
That now I'm super curious. Is there any personally memorable moment in a show, that sort of regarding this choreography, you know, that you feel, oh, this is great. What I did here was, I don't know, something special, perhaps?
I don't know. That feels weird.
She's your baby.
Yeah, I'm like, you want to know some cool shit? I don't know. That feels weird.
Or not even cool shit, but something where you felt that it was meaningful, or that you added something that you didn't see initially. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if I can pick out a moment, but I believe that I do my job well when an actor feels like I have given them something that helps them move through their character, or discover something about their character that they didn't do. Like when I was recently working at Yale, I remember working with Janine Sorellis. At the end of the process, she said, like, you know, you make us better actors. Like you've given us behavior and movement that make us better actors. And if someone says that to me, I feel like I've done a really good job. I feel like I've done my work, and there are some times in shows where, like, sometimes I notice myself saying, like, no one's gonna notice this but me, but please do this. And I like sitting in an audience and, like, wondering if people notice these small things that tick a scene, and bring it to life in a way. But it would be tough to pick things out, because I also really try to individualize those things. So it's definitely, it's a collaboration. And sometimes I'm like, oh, like, Janine, I see that you're doing this. Like, I want you to, like, I want to inspire you to, like, keep going further with that, because that really unlocks something for you. So try that. So things like, it's a very fine line between just directing, but it's all based on movement. So it's choreography.
Right.
That's wonderful. I didn't realize how collaborative the actor and the performer is with you, instead of just necessarily having something for them to do, but just
no, I'm not that kind of choreographer.
Fantastic.
Well, because you can tell. I mean, I think at least with the directors that I work with, they really are. They are after truth, and they're after honest performance. And I believe that you can tell the difference between if I said, like, hey, Ray, so I want you to, like, do this, right? And you're like, well, I get that you want me to do a funny dance. I'm not sure if that's the way that I would do a funny dance. So if I do that, it's just going to look like I'm doing the thing you told me to do, versus if I were like, I just, like, watch you for a few days and I'm like, oh, okay, like, I kind of get what your dancing is like. So, like, you know, do this or something like that. And then you're like, oh, like, that's thanks, Raja, that feels like me. That feels organic to my body. And then you can do that honestly versus trying to perfect something that maybe feels organic to me or in my mind and doesn't feel organic to you. That would be useless. Sorry to all the choreographers out there who do it that way. I don't.
I mean, first of all, don't be sorry.
Right.
Okay,
And
I'm not sorry.
second of all, you laid it out very casually, but that is revolutionary. Right. That is absolutely revolutionary in theater.
Is it?
Yes, it really is. I'm just thinking back, all the choreography I've ever gotten was just like ready-made. So that's a big deal.
I mean, but sometimes I think it could get me in trouble. Like, sometimes I feel nervous about walking into a room where I'm like, y'all, I don't have nothing made, because I need to watch people and I need to develop it in the room, and sometimes it's kind of your job to have it ready. This is why I'm like, I don't be choosing works. I'm like, people have to kind of want to work with me and kind of want to work with my style, or I could probably, you know, I haven't yet been in a room where someone's like, where's the dance? And I'm like, and sit. You know,
Fox step.
You know, and it's not that I can't do that. You know, like, I'm trained to be able to do that, and I could do that. It's not where I feel like I shine.
That is a very downtown sensibility.
It's very downtown.
It's very
Shout out to that. In addition to being a choreographer, I feel like we've talked about choreography so much, but you're also a director.
I am a director.
A theater director. How do you typically approach new work?
I approach new work like devised theater.
So you really are.
I am so downtown. I'm a postmodernist. I'm downtown, devised. I mean that.
I think that I know why Young Jin Lee was like, yeah.
It's all coming together.
We're
just understanding.
I believe that is the best approach because in some way you know a lot of what it isn't, but you don't know exactly what it is yet in new work. You're able to have a focus that where nothing is precious, but everything is precious. I feel like these are all devised theater sensibilities. You're like, we're going to discover it in the room.
Right.
We are going to experiment. We're going to let things be precious and then let things fall apart.
Right.
It's going to be one thing one day and tomorrow it's going to be another thing. So that is how I approach. That's my approach to new work. And dramaturgy, which for me means, storytelling, which can be very abstract. Or it could be very traditional, but understanding how do I say, like, dramaturgy, I think, is like the pedagogy of watching theater, right? Where you're like, you're teaching people how to watch it while it's happening. And so dramaturgy for me is taking care of that pedagogy in the work itself, where you're like, well, you set these things up, so you have to follow through because that's how you have shown people what's important, what's not important.
I feel like that is like the most real shit ever.
If you're approaching theater in that way, I think I think my criticism is that sometimes we're not paying enough attention to story.
Yeah. I want to be your hype man right now. We're like,
I'll take a hype man.
I already know the rest of my question. I don't even need my question. But yes, that's really fascinating.
That's how I approach. That's how you have to approach devised theater, right? Because you're like, we're making this as we go, so we have to pay attention to what we've done in order to do the next thing. Or once we do something, if it changes what we've set up, then we have to go back and edit.
Yeah, to understand the whole world of where you are.
Exactly. So that's what I do.
We try to
reach the youth.
Reach the youth, right.
The kids.
Yeah, the kids. This
For the
regarding
children.
is for the kids. Do you have any advice for the kids out there? Perhaps a younger you.
Well, I'm super young.
Well, of course.
A younger me,
even a younger
me would be a baby. So I would say drink your milk. Don't cry too much, but definitely cry so that you're in touch with your emotions. But I'm not sure, like, what do you mean by younger? What are you saying? Right?
College theater students.
Right.
Well, I just finished college. Advice is hard. Yeah. I think advice is hard because...
I think that's why we frame it as maybe something for yourself, too. You know what I mean? Because we understand that not everyone is the same, but maybe something that, something personal to yourself.
Okay. I would say find your tribe. Because I think what is necessary is that you have integrity. And I certainly feel that the people that you have around you that hold you accountable to your integrity will matter. And so even my colleagues, like, I feel so honored to have the people who are my colleagues as my colleagues because they are integrous. And that makes me, I'm like, well, I've got to be integrous because I'm hanging out with these integrity people. So, like, and I think about my closest friends, I trust them. I watch them navigate the world in such a way that they are conscious, they are thoughtful, they make mistakes, but they are diligent about learning and diligent about doing what they do. Right. And that in turn reflects on me because I'm like, I value them and I value this thing that they have, which is integrity, and I want that for myself. And so I'm able to learn and watch and I want to be able to reflect that back. Right. So find your tribe, kiddos, little young babies who are still at the teat.
Right.
Find your tribe.
only that are younger
sooner rather than later, or you're gonna be hungry.
This is a recommendation show. Would you like to recommend anything and everything you would like?
See every show that I make and then I am a part of. I don't know. Actually, I actually think that it's important to see everything. I try to see as much as I can, which is very difficult, but I love trashing shows as much as I love praising shows because everyone's doing the best they can. So you're just like, that was awful and I would never make that. And maybe someone says that about my work, and that's totally fine. We're all in dialogue with each other. So see as much as you can and learn what's important to you, learn what your aesthetic is, learn what calls your attention and
also what doesn't.
And also what doesn't, and be able to practice and know what that is. And don't throw shade in public spaces.
Or sometimes you do because you gotta.
I mean, at a Bear Burger, you can throw some shade at a Bear Burger. I don't know.
I'm just saying that because I'm a Twitter gremlin. So.
I'm not on the Twitter.
Right. Probably for the best.
I mean, I probably have a Twitter account that's like automatic to like whatever I post on Facebook, so it appears like I'm on Twitter.
Right.
But.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
This is so good to have you.
This is our dance.
We'll take it.